The crystal chandeliers of the Pierre Hotel's grand ballroom cast a fractured, prism-like light over the crowd, a visual echo of the diamonds I spent my life examining. I am Elena Vance, a gemologist and vintage jewelry appraiser, a woman who lives her life through the magnification of a 10-power loupe. In my world, flaws are microscopic, provenance is everything, and clarity is the ultimate virtue. But here, amidst the clinking of champagne flutes and the roar of forced laughter, everything felt opaque and synthetic. I stood near a pillar, swirling my club soda, feeling like an unpolished stone in a display case of rhinestones. Tonight was the launch party for Lumina, a lifestyle and wellness brand founded by my younger sister, Julianne. At 27, Julianne was a creature of social media algorithms and calculated serendipity. She was vibrant, loud, and possessed a terrifying ability to make people believe that her chaotic whims were visionary business strategies. Standing on the stage, bathed in a spotlight that cost more than my first car, she looked every inch the Manhattan it girl. Her golden hair was perfectly tousled, her teeth blindingly white, and her voice pitched to that specific frequency that suggested intimacy while speaking to 300 people. "Elena, darling, stop lurking in the shadows," my mother, Cynthia, hissed, appearing at my elbow. She was wearing a gown that was too young for her and a smile that was too tight. "This is your sister's night. At least pretend you aren't analyzing the clarity of everyone's engagement rings." "I'm just staying out of the way, Mother," I said, my voice steady. "I know the drill. Just try not to have one of your episodes," my father, Robert, added, joining us. He adjusted his silk tie, his eyes scanning the room for anyone more important than his eldest daughter. "We have investors here. Serious people. We don't need you causing a scene with your dietary restrictions." My dietary restrictions were a severe, life-threatening allergy to pistachios. It wasn't a preference. It was a biological mandate. My family treated it like a character flaw, a dramatic affectation I adopted to steal focus from Julianne's effortless perfection. To them, I was the fragility in the family diamond, the carbon spot that ruined the value. The tension that would eventually lead to the night's catastrophe began 40 minutes later. Julianne had been trying to court the favor of Silas Sterling, a venture capitalist whose portfolio was legendary in New York. He was a man of few words and discerning taste, known for backing businesses that had substance, not just flash. Julianne had cornered him near the ice sculpture, pitching her vision of holistic wellness with frantic energy. I was standing nearby, examining the setting of a brooch on an older woman's lapel, when Silas stepped away from Julianne mid-sentence. He walked straight toward me. "That's an Art Deco piece, isn't it?" he asked, his voice deep and calm, cutting through the ambient noise. "Cartier? Circa 1925? I looked up, surprised. "Close," I said, adjusting my glasses. "It's actually a Van Cleef & Arpels, late 1928. You can tell by the invisible setting of the rubies. It was a revolutionary technique at the time." Silas's eyes lit up. For the next 20 minutes, we ignored the party. We talked about the Mohs scale, the ethics of sourcing sapphires, and the tragedy of recutting old European diamonds to fit modern standards. He was fascinated by the chemistry of my work, the patience required to authenticate history. "I have a collection of loose emeralds from the Muzo mine," Silas said, leaning in. "I've been looking for someone trustworthy to catalog them. Most appraisers just see the dollar signs. But you see the story. Would you consult for me?" I felt a flush of professional pride. "I would be honored, Mr. Sterling." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Julianne. She was watching us from the bar, her knuckles white as she gripped a martini glass. Her smile was fixed, but her eyes were cold, dead things. I had committed the ultimate sin. I had been interesting. I had stolen the attention of the most powerful man in the room, the man she needed, simply by being myself. The dinner service began shortly after. It was a seated affair, 10 people to a table, with assigned seating that placed me directly across from Julianne and Silas Sterling. The servers moved with military precision, placing plates of arugula salad and truffle risotto in front of the guests. "I had the chef make something special for you, Elle," Julianne said, her voice dripping with sugary concern. She signaled a waiter who was holding a separate covered dish. "I know you hate the risotto texture, and you're always so paranoid about cross-contamination in the kitchen. So I asked for a simple basil pesto pasta, made in a sanitized area. No nuts, obviously. Just basil, garlic, olive oil, and parmesan." The waiter placed the dish in front of me. The pesto was a vibrant, verdant green, smelling of fresh basil and garlic. "That's thoughtful of you, Julianne," I said, genuinely surprised. Usually she forgot I existed at these dinners. "I'm not a monster," she laughed, glancing at Silas to ensure he was watching her act of benevolence. "I know how scary your allergy is. I wanted you to feel safe tonight." I should have known better. In my line of work, if a deal looks too good to be true, it's a forgery. But the lighting was dim. The conversation was flowing. And for once, I wanted to believe my sister cared. I trusted the visual evidence, green sauce, basil smell, and ignored the instinct that had kept me alive for 26 years. I took a bite. It was delicious, rich, and savory. I took another. The reaction hit me within 30 seconds. It didn't start with an itch. It started with a metallic taste, like I was sucking on a copper penny. Then, the heat rose up my neck. My tongue felt suddenly too large for my mouth, a heavy, swollen slug pushing against my teeth. I dropped my fork. It clattered against the fine china, a harsh sound that momentarily silenced the table. "Elena?" Silas asked, his brow furrowing. "Are you all right?" I tried to speak, but my voice was a wet, strangled rasp. I reached for my throat, clawing at the pearls I wore. The air in the room seemed to vanish. My lungs were trying to draw breath through a straw that was rapidly collapsing. "Oh, stop it," Julianne sighed, rolling her eyes. She looked at the other guests with a conspiratorial grin. "She does this. If the food isn't exactly what she wants, she gets dramatic. Elena, don't ruin the vibe." But Silas Sterling wasn't laughing. He was on his feet in an instant. He had a niece with severe allergies. He knew the look of anaphylaxis. It is a look of primal terror, the look of a drowning person on dry land. "She's not acting," Silas roared, a sound so commanding it stopped the music. "Call 911, now!" He rounded the table, knocking over a crystal water pitcher in his haste. He grabbed my shoulders, lowering me to the plush carpet as my legs gave out. The world was tilting, the chandeliers spinning into a vortex of fracturing light. "EpiPen," I wheezed, the word barely audible. "Bag!" Silas ripped my clutch open, dumping the contents onto the floor. He found the auto-injector. "I've got it. Hold still." He didn't hesitate. He jammed the needle into my outer thigh, right through the silk of my dress. I felt the spring-loaded mechanism fire, felt the rush of synthetic adrenaline flood my system like liquid fire. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. The room was chaos. People were standing, gasping, filming with their phones. My parents were hovering, looking more embarrassed than terrified. "Really, Elena?" I heard my father mutter. "Now?" But it was Julianne's voice that cut through the fog of my closing consciousness. She had walked around the table and was standing over me, looking down with a sneer that she thought only I could see. "Look at you," she hissed, low enough that the chaotic crowd wouldn't hear, but close enough for me. "Always have to be the center of attention. I put just a teaspoon of pistachio paste in there. You're fine. Stop faking the dying swan act." She admitted it. She thought I was exaggerating. She thought she was teaching me a lesson. She didn't realize she was killing me. As the black spots began to eat away at my vision, a cold, diamond-hard clarity took over my mind. The adrenaline was sharpening my senses even as my body failed. I couldn't speak, but I could move my arm. I reached out and grabbed Silas's wrist. I pointed a shaking finger at the pasta dish on the table. Then I pointed at the waiter, a young man named David who looked terrified, holding a tray. I made a fist, the sign for hold or keep. Silas looked at me, then at the food. He was a man who made billions reading subtle market shifts. He understood immediately. "Nobody touches that plate," Silas bellowed to the security team that had just arrived. "Secure this table. That food is evidence. Nobody clears anything." "Mr. Sterling, please," Julianne said, her voice trembling with fake anxiety. "It's just pasta. Let's get this mess cleaned up so the paramedics can—" "I said leave it." Silas turned on her, his eyes cold as ice. "If this is an allergic reaction, that dish is the weapon. And if you try to dispose of it, I will personally ensure the police know why." That was the last thing I saw, Julianne's face draining of color, before the paramedics swarmed in and the world went dark. I woke up in the ICU at Lenox Hill Hospital. My throat felt like it had been scrubbed with steel wool, and my chest ached from the strain of breathing. But I was alive. I spent 3 days in the hospital. The doctors told me I was lucky. The biphasic reaction could have been fatal if not for the immediate epinephrine and the second dose the paramedics administered. On the second morning, a man walked into my room. He wasn't a doctor. He was dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than my apartment, carrying a leather briefcase. "Ms. Vance," he said. "I'm Harrison Stone. Silas Sterling asked me to come." I knew the name. Harrison Stone was a shark, a corporate litigator who specialized in destroying people who crossed his high-net-worth clients. "Silas, Mr. Sterling sent you?" I rasped. My voice was wrecked. He did. He also paid for a private toxicology analysis of the pasta dish he secured, Stone said, pulling a document from his briefcase. The lab results came back this morning. The pesto contained a significant concentration of pistachio oil and ground pistachio nuts. It wasn't trace contamination, Ms. Vance. It was an ingredient. I closed my eyes, the betrayal hitting harder than the anaphylaxis. "Julianne, we also have a statement from the sous chef," Stone continued. "He claims your sister provided a small jar of special gourmet paste and insisted it be mixed into your serving to enhance the flavor. She told him it was a surprise." "She tried to kill me," I whispered. "Whether she intended to kill you or just harm you is a matter for a jury," Stone said, his face impassive. "But in the eyes of the law, the action is the same. Aggravated assault, reckless endangerment. Given the premeditation, we could push for attempted murder." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "Mr. Sterling suggests that you might prefer a quieter resolution, one that ensures your security without a tabloid circus, though he is willing to back you all the way to criminal court if you choose." I thought about my parents. I thought about the years of being told to be quiet, to be smaller, to let Julianne shine. I thought about the look in Julianne's eyes when she stood over me while I choked. "I want her explicitly ruined," I said, my voice gaining a terrifying steadiness. "Not just embarrassed. I want her assets. I want an admission. And I want to build something of my own on the ashes of her bank account." Stone smiled. It was a terrifying expression. "Then we are going to get along very well." The mediation took place 2 weeks later in a conference room in Midtown Manhattan. The room was sterile, air-conditioned to a chill, and smelled of lemon polish and fear. My parents sat on one side of the mahogany table, looking aged and haggard. Julianne sat between them, looking small. She wasn't wearing her usual designer armor. She was in a simple blouse, no makeup, trying to play the innocent child who made a mistake. I sat opposite them, flanked by Harrison Stone. I didn't look small. I wore a structured black blazer and my glasses. I looked like what I was, an expert who had identified a flaw and was about to cut it out. "Elena," my mother started, her voice wobbling. This is excessive. Lawyers? Can't we handle this as a family? We are handling it, I said, my voice still slightly hoarse. This is how adults handle attempted murder. It wasn't murder, Julianne snapped, her facade cracking instantly. I just wanted you to get hives. I thought you'd get itchy and leave so I could talk to Silas without you monopolizing him. I didn't know your throat would close up. You always exaggerate everything. Harrison Stone didn't even look up from his papers. Admission of intent to harm, he muttered, as if checking a box. That's helpful. He slid a file across the table toward their family attorney, a man who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Here is the situation, Stone said, his voice smooth and deadly. We have the toxicology report. We have the sworn affidavit from the sous chef. We have the statement from Mr. Sterling regarding the defendant's comments while the victim was incapacitated. We are prepared to file criminal charges with the district attorney this afternoon. My father went pale. Criminal charges? Julianne could go to prison? For a significant amount of time, Stone confirmed. Class B violent felony. Mandatory minimums apply. However, Stone continued, Ms. Vance is willing to settle this civilly, provided her terms are met immediately. What terms? My father asked. $1.2 million, I said. The silence in the room was absolute. That's all the money in Julianne's trust, my mother gasped. And the liquidity from the company launch. It would bankrupt her. That is the number, I said, locking eyes with my sister. To cover my medical bills, my pain and suffering, and the punitive damages for the fact that my own sister poisoned me at dinner. It's also the price of my silence. If you pay, I sign an NDA. No police, no press. If you don't, I walk out of here and hold a press conference with Silas Sterling standing next to me. Julianne looked at me with pure hatred. You're jealous. You've always been jealous of me. You're trying to steal my life. I don't want your life, Julianne, I said calmly. Your life is fake. I want the capital to start my own, and I'm going to take it from you because you owe it to me. Dad, Julianne wailed, turning to him. Do something. My father looked at the evidence on the table. He looked at the grim face of Harrison Stone. Then he looked at me. He saw something in my face he had never seen before. The absolute refusal to yield. He realized that if they pushed me, I would burn their reputation to the ground. Sign the papers, Julianne, my father whispered. What? Sign them, he snapped, his voice breaking. I can't have a daughter in prison. The scandal would destroy the firm. Just sign it. I watched as Julianne Vance, the girl who had everything, picked up the pen with a trembling hand. She cried as she signed away her trust fund, her business capital, and her future. She signed away her power over me. When it was done, I stood up. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't hug my parents. I walked out of the room, into the elevator, and down to the busy streets of New York. The city sounded different that day. It didn't sound like noise. It sounded like opportunity. 14 months later. The bell above the door of Vance and Sterling Antiquities chimed softly. My atelier was located in a brownstone on the Upper East Side, a space of quiet luxury with velvet-lined cases and perfect lighting. I sat at my workbench, the heavy brass microscope cool against my forehead. I was examining a 19th-century sapphire, looking for the characteristic silk inclusions that would prove it was untreated. It was beautiful, flawed, and real. The mail is here, Ms. Vance, my assistant Leo called out. Put it on the desk, thanks. I finished my examination and walked to the front. On top of the pile was a glossy tabloid magazine. I usually ignored them, but the headline caught my eye. Lumina brand implodes. Founder Julianne Vance files for bankruptcy. I picked it up. There was a photo of Julianne, looking disheveled, leaving a courthouse. The article detailed how her business had collapsed due to lack of funding and management instability. She was currently living in a studio apartment in Queens, attempting to pivot to selling diet teas on Instagram. I felt nothing. No joy, no pity. Just the neutral observation of a fact. Like noting a chip on a gemstone. It affected the value, but it wasn't my fault. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Silas Sterling. The auction catalog is ready. They want you to lead the appraisal on the Romanov collection. Dinner to celebrate? I smiled, a real smile, one that reached my eyes. I typed back, I'd love to, but no pesto this time. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. My parents still sent emails occasionally, asking to meet, claiming they missed me. I never replied. I had learned the most important lesson of my profession. Just because something has a shared history doesn't mean it has value. Sometimes the most precise cut is the one that separates the gem from the rough rock that surrounds it. I turned back to my workbench, adjusted my light, and went back to work. I had diamonds to grade, and for the first time in my life, everything was crystal clear.